Morning, guys. So I'm going to carry on with Jekyll and Hyde. Now, we're currently on chapter 9, which is called Dr. Lanyon's Narrative. I know in my edition, I've had to write the numbers next to it just so it's a bit clearer. And actually, we are on page 38 in this book, and I finished, really annoyingly, like halfway through a huge paragraph. It was after the bit where Lanyon is talking about, in his letter, he's explaining how the last night happened for him with regards to helping out Henry Jekyll. So Henry sent him a letter saying, it will save my life if you go to my quarters, get this drawer of drugs and bring it back to your place, and then the next bit will happen. And this is where Lanyon's talking about what's in the drawer, and he's found a notebook that has got lots and lots of entries that don't seem to make any sense, but they go back over a few years, and there's hundreds of entries where he's obviously experimenting. And we just got up to the point where he was talking about usually no more than a single word, double, occurring perhaps 6 times in a total of several hundred entries, and once very early in the list and followed by several marks of exclamation, total failure. So in my book, it's just there. If you're in this book, this one, we're on page 96, and you can see where my highlights are there. We've got total failure, so it's sort of in that top bit there. Okay, so you're looking for the 3 exclamation marks after total failure, so that's where I'm going to go from. So there's only one more chapter after this, and the final chapter is a very long one. It will take me a number of parts to actually read that, and there's lots to say about it. So this one is where we've gone to Dr. Lanyon and we're finding out what happened with him, and it's quite interesting because obviously until now we haven't really had any answers. Utterson has been trying to solve the mystery and not been able to, so this gives him a load more information. So, leopard print just for you lot today. Okay. Followed by several marks of exclamation, total failure. All this, though it whetted my curiosity, told me little that was definite. Here were a phial of some tincture, a paper of some salt, and the record of a series of experiments that led, like too many of Jekyll's investigations, to no end of practical usefulness. So Lanyon has little respect for the experiments that Jekyll was doing because he doesn't respect his science. He believes he's gone down this kind of fantastical, unscientific balderdash kind of route. How could the presence of these articles in my house affect either the honour, the sanity, or the life of my flighty colleague? Now, I've highlighted flighty colleague because he's just one of these people who's just up in the air. You never really know what he's doing. He can't really understand what's happening here. If his messenger could go to one place, why would he not go to another? And even granting some impediment, why was this gentleman to be received by me in secret? So I've highlighted secret and underlined that. So this is the next bit of the plan. So now that Lanyon has gone to Jekyll's place, got the drawer, taken it back to his house, at midnight, classically gothic, when no one's going to be around, a gentleman is going to come to the door saying that he's on behalf of Dr. Jekyll. And Lanyon's like, well, hang on, if you can get a note to me here, why can't I get a note to this guy? And why does the drawer have to come from his house to my house? Why can't it just be done there? None of it's making any sense. And the idea of it being secret suggests illegal, which obviously is worrying Lanyon at this point. The more I reflected, the more convinced I grew that I was dealing with a case of cerebral disease. So he thinks he's mad. So I've circled cerebral disease. If you post-it note, you can just put a tiny little post-it one and just put madness. And though I dismissed my servants to bed, I loaded an old revolver, and I might be found in some posture of self-defense. Now that's interesting because he obviously feels that there is a potential threat here. So he's got his revolver ready to go in case this turns out to be something really dodgy. 12 o'clock had scarce rung out over London, ere the knocker sounded very gently on the door. I went myself at the summons and found a small man crouching against the pillars of the portico. So please highlight small man crouching. Everything about the description of this guy, which I'm hoping you have figured out as Mr. Hyde. If not, spoiler, you're about to find out in the next sentence, it's Mr. Hyde. We already know that he's often described as very small, and the verbs associated with him are often kind of animal-like, so it feels like he's crouching, like he's trying to hide, almost as if he's feeling threatened, like he's got to get off the street, is the impression there. Are you come from Dr. Jekyll, I asked. He told me yes by a constrained gesture, and when I'd bidden him enter, he did not obey me without a searching backward glance into the darkness of the square. which I've highlighted, and I've put Mr. Hyde in the margin. And the fact that he's glancing backwards into the darkness, in the next sentence it says, there was a policeman not far off, advancing with his bull's eye open. And at the sight I thought my visitor started, and made greater haste. So he's nervous, he's looking over, she's quite literally paranoid, looking over his shoulder. Remember, everybody knows that Mr. Hyde killed Sir Danvers Carew. Everyone knows that. His name was out in the press, a description of him was put out in the press, it's just that no one's seen him yet. So if a policeman were to recognise him, it's really dangerous for Hyde to be out on the streets. Okay, so obviously Lanyon doesn't know it's Mr. Hyde yet. He hasn't heard his name, and he would recognise that name in connection with the murder of Danvers Carew. But the guy's terrified, and he's crouching, and it's the middle of the night, and he's obviously sneaking around. So feels very illegal, feels very clandestine, which is a great word, meaning sort of very sneaky, intentionally sneaky because you're trying to avoid something, usually illegal. These particulars struck me, I confess, disagreeably. And as I followed him into the bright light of the consulting room, I kept my hand ready on my weapon. Here at last, I had a chance of clearly seeing him. I had never set eyes on him before, so much was certain. He was small, as I have said. I was struck besides with the shocking expression of his face, with his remarkable combination of great muscular activity and great apparent debility of constitution. And, last but not least, with the odd, subjective disturbance caused by his neighbourhood. This bore some resemblance to insipid rigour, and was accompanied by a marked sinking of the pulse. At the time I set it down to some idiosyncratic personal distaste, and merely wondered at the acuteness of the symptoms, but I have since had reason to believe the cause to lie much deeper in the nature of man, and to turn on some nobler hinge than the principle of hatred. A lot of big words in there. Let me break that down. I'm actually going to run out of time soon, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop. I'm going to have to delete some more stuff off my phone, and then I'm going to break down what is actually being said there, because there's a lot of tricky words. Okay, bye.